right, good evening. Welcome to the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Education. Today is Monday, February 3rd. This evening, President Grant and Ms. Williams are excused. They are at the NSBA Advocacy Conference in Washington, D.C. So will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis, will you call the roll?
Ms. Lewis is here. Reverend Matias,
Present.
Mr. Ross,
Here.
Ms. Williams is excused. Dr. Baker,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Dr. Flores,
Present.
President Grant's excused. Vice President Shockey,
Here. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Dr. Gorman, celebrations.
Madam Vice President and members of the board, I would like to ask Jonathan Harper to come forward. This evening, he will be presenting on the Grand Rapids Environmental Education Network, or the GREEN Network. Jonathan.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman, Ms. Shockey, and members of the board. Thank you for having me this evening. I do want to introduce a colleague of mine. Her name is Sally Triant. She's with GrowWise Learning, and she is now serving as our environmental education consultant. So I've invited Sally to come here tonight to provide some celebration, including all of our partners, and kind of celebrate the work that we're doing around green and environmental education in the district. So please, Sally.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm honored to represent the work being done through the Grand Rapids Environmental Education Network. That's what GREEN is. So the mission of this group was founded with a generous funding of the Wege Foundation to deliver a comprehensive K-12 approach for students of all ages promoting environmental literacy. Working to this end are the community partners of Blandford Nature Center, Grand Rapids Parks and Recreation, the Grand Rapids Public Museum, Groundswell, and the Grand Valley State University College of Education, the John Ball Zoo, the Lower Grand River Organization of Watersheds, and the Grand Valley Metro Council, the Outdoor Discovery Center in Holland, our community's children, and the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. So personally, my journey here at GRPS started as an educator in the district over 10 years ago when I was able to student teach at the Blandford School. I'm very proud to be here now serving to coordinate this current effort to encourage environmental education through the GREEN Grant. This visionary work aims to align our incredible array of community partners and offer every student in this district hands-on, high-quality environmental education and outdoor experiences that encompass curriculum requirements while encouraging stewardship and promoting civic engagement. So in the recent survey that we just had, 99% of teachers, staff, and administration agreed that promoting environmental education and teaching students about the outdoors is important. In addition to that, 97% of administration and 90% of teachers agreed that they felt it's important to teach classroom lessons outdoors when possible. So the role of GREEN over the next year and a half is to make this education accessible and realistic for every teacher. To meet this, and through initiatives supported by the Grand Rapids Student Advancement Foundations and the Open Systems Technologies, our scope of work is looking to provide every student with environmentally themed field trips hosted by our community partners and wrapped with curriculum to make these experiences deep and meaningful. At the same time, we also want to recognize that our schoolyard habitats and community parks are valuable resources where education can take place. Our goal here is to include removing barriers through professional development. What we want to do is, sorry, I lost my thought. We want to At the same time, we're training educators how to use the outdoors. We want to conduct a schoolyard features inventory to look at the school grounds that we steward as a district and help educators understand the resources they have available. And also, through the Green Schoolyards, we are investing in renovations made possible by the Wegge Foundation and the Grand Rapids Parks. So indeed, in order for our students to connect with nature, they must spend time outdoors. It is through the regular, repeated interactions with lessons in their schoolyards and through impactful experiences like field trips that our students will come to know the places where they live and learn through nature's unrivaled capacity to inspire and engage. So this fall, I had the opportunity to chaperone some field trips. And I got to go on the 5th grade field trip to the lake shore, which actually in the bottom right hand of that slide is an image of that day. As we walked the trail, 8 of the 15 students in my group explained that they had never seen the lake before. And words could hardly convey their awe when they laid eyes on the vast expanse of water that is Lake Michigan. I assure you, it was an amazing experience and unforgettable for everyone involved. Through our efforts with Green, GRPS has the potential to continue to perennial plant those seeds of wonder. Through this work, the district can have the distinction of using our resources to grow scholars who are at the same time becoming stewards of our local schoolyards, neighborhoods, city parks, and watersheds. So it is an honor to be helping move this work forward for the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your work and
Thank
the
you.
impact you'll have on our students.
Thank you.
I did have a question. Do the kids get to go out like in the winter and do stuff, or is it just,
We're working on that.
okay.
And
was just wondering.
no, that's a great question. And one of the wonderful things that the survey, which we're working on compiling all the results for, we had a remarkable response to the survey. And one of the most important parts for me is discovering what the barriers were that both teachers and administration feel. And one of those things is just making sure that kids have enough coats and gear to get outside. And then that is when we'll be able to see them outside in every season. And also just recognizing that our schoolyards have, wildlife and habitat happening year-round, and in our parks that are very walkable from many of our schools, so.
The reason I asked that is that there was a science teacher at Westwood that would actually take her kids out in the winter. Now, it was a challenge, but she made it interesting enough that they participated and got something out of it, so
And
thank you.
another important component to this is making sure that we're matching curriculum, required curriculum, making sure that we can meet our standards but be doing it just outside. And so there are plenty of things you can do in every season.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Ms. Benson, may we have your student report?
Yes. So this month is February, and that means that it is Black History Month. Something new that we're doing at City is starting some student-led events. So that's to include other students from other backgrounds and to be more diverse. So during the last week of February, we're going to have an after-school spirit week, and that includes a bowling night, a T-shirt design night, and a movie night. And we're going to be showing The Hate U Give. And then we'll be ending the month with a Black History Month Arts Assembly.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis, do we have any public comment on board agenda items?
No, we don't.
Very good. All right, Secretary's report, back to you.
That's me. All right, the committee meeting schedule, the Academic Achievement Committee will be meeting Wednesday, February the 5th at 4:30 p.m. in the Board Chambers Auditorium of the Grand Rapids Public School Administration Building. The Montessori Conference, we are inviting teachers, administrators, and parents to all come together and participate in a morning of creating a culture for Montessori learning, Montessori leadership, and the celebration of the child. The event will take place on Saturday, February 22nd, from 7:30 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. at Innovation Central High. The conference is free and provides an opportunity to learn more about Montessori education in breakout sessions led by our guests, Marta Donahoe, Robin Bremen, as well as our local Montessori leaders. Please register via everbright.com and type Montessori in search box Select Saturday workshop option to learn more about details and to register.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lewis. Next is our Finance Committee report. Dr. Flores, you'll be giving the report.
Yes, the Finance Committee met on the 27th last month and and went over purchases for this cycle. Those are in your packages. Just some highlights real quick of the Early Childhood Bright Beginnings program for about $30,000, YW or YMCA for $42,000, and then some international bachelor exam fees for city high school students of $79,545. We're also there were several purchases. I won't go over each one of them because they are in your packages. But for materials, supplies for various programs, including the ESL English language learner programs, benchmark education, National Geographic purchases, and others. But what I think is important, certainly those are important, but this is also important before the agenda, is that that there are 3 amendments that will be presented tonight. I'm sure you get more information about that from our CFO, and a resolution for the KISD and a choice resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Flores. Any questions for Dr. Flores? Very good. Superintendent's report, Dr. Gorman.
Madam Vice President, members of the board, I would like to ask Mr. Mel Atkins to come forward. He'll be sharing the importance of Count Day, when Count Day is, and what we need to do on that day. Mr. Atkins.
Good evening, Ms. Shockley, members of the board, and Dr. Gorman. It's that time of year again. The second of 2 annual count days is scheduled for Wednesday, February 12th. Attendance counts each and every day, but on February 12th, attendance counts for the state funding on how we get our students, schools, and the district as a whole, how the funding happens. So it's really 2 count days. 90% of the funding comes in the fall, and 10% becomes on this Wednesday, the February 12th. We want to remind everyone, take this opportunity to remind parents that we believe attendance is important every day, but it's especially important on this day. We have district-wide efforts to reduce chronic absenteeism with our Strive for Less Than 5 campaign. And we also want to take this opportunity to have parents to understand how funding works in the state of Michigan. If your child is sick, if you have extraneous circumstances, don't worry. If you call in, you have additional time, for get your student to count. And so just remember February 12th. Attendance matters.
Thank you. We have 7 action items this evening. So we'll begin with the Kent Intermediate School District Schools of Choice Resolution. You'll note that there are 3 resolutions, but we only need to take 1 vote to adopt all 3. Is there any discussion about the resolution? May I have a motion for approval of the KISD Schools of Choice Resolution?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis, will you call the roll?
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Williams excused. Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused. And Vice President Shockey?
Yes. Our next action item is the purchasing agenda. Is there any discussion? All right, may I have a motion for approval of the purchasing agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis is here. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Williams excused. Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant's excused. Vice President Shockey?
Yes. Thank you. Next action item is the resolution to ratify the GRAOP contract. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have just a clarifying question. So, I know there was some concern that the longevity pay wasn't in the contract. Just for clarity, the way I understand it is that the longevity pay that someone will be eligible to, that's just now being broken up and added to their hourly rate.
That is correct. After speaking with Sharon Pitts, that is what was negotiated. So an hourly increase, no longer the longevity payment.
Further discussion? All right, may I have a motion for approval of the resolution to ratify the Gray Up contract?
Motion to approve the resolution to ratify the Gray App contract.
Support.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Williams is excused. Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant is excused. Vice President Chaki?
Yes. Next, we have a donation for East Leonard Elementary School, a very generous anonymous donation of $12,000 to that school. If you're listening, thank you. Any discussion about this donation? All right, may I have a motion to approve the donation for East Leonard Elementary School? So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis is yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Vice President Chaki?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next three action items are related to the adoption of Budget Amendment 1, and I see Mr. Oberst approaching.
Motion to limit this presentation to 1 hour.
Good evening, Ms. Schottky, Dr. Gorman, and board members, and it'll be well within 1 hour, Dr. Baker. Thank you. As is the case routinely in the district, we come to you tonight with the first budget amendment. And I will remind you there are three funds that require action, each separately. The general fund, which is our main operating fund, I'll spend a little bit of time on some of the details related to that particular amendment. The other two being the special revenue fund, which up until this year contained our center-based special education program. That is now gone. The amendment you'll see in your packet there for special education relates specifically to closing that fund out in the first quarter of this fiscal year. The other major fund there is a food service fund, and there were no amendments. There was not an amendment to the food service fund. A few other smaller funds within the special revenue fund, again, those were not adjusted in this first budget amendment. And the third fund then is a debt retirement fund. That is a fund that accumulates the property tax and investment revenue to pay down our bonded debt. And again, small adjustment there that we make every year related to the amount of taxes we're going to collect, as well as some adjustment to the investment earnings. Before I get into the Amendment 1, the general fund, I want to remind you again that back in June when you first adopted the budget, you may recall, we did not yet have a state budget. We did not even have a very good idea of where things were going to stand. The governor and the House and the Senate all had introduced their own proposals. Many cases, they differ significantly in what they were, and so we did not know. We didn't get that information finalized until early September when they finally agreed on the budget and got passed. You may recall also then at that point, the governor vetoed a significant number of the items that were passed in the original budget, totaling almost $1 billion. A few of those impacted school aid fund. A few of those were subsequently put back in based on a supplemental bill that was passed not too long ago. So that's the gyration that took place during the first 6 months of our fiscal year. And because we did not have a budget when this was first passed by you back in June, most of the adjustments related to the general fund are reflective of now we know what the budget is. So in your packet, I have it on the screen there. You guys can see it here? Okay. The first page there is just the summary of the budget on the revenue side. You can see, again, the first column is the original budget that was passed by this board back in June. The middle column, Amendment 1, that's the impact of the amendment. And then the last column is the amended budget if you accept this amendment tonight. that will reflect what the amended budget will be. As you can see on the revenue side, it increases revenue by almost $9.5 million. We'll see the breakout in that in just a minute. You can see a big portion of that is in the state sources, both the restricted and unrestricted. That reflects, at the time the budget was passed, we had presented to you a per pupil foundation allowance increase of $180 per student. It actually came out at $240 a student, so an extra $60 a student. And as was communicated to you back in October, our fall count was about 200 students greater than what we had used as a budget enrollment number in our budget that was accepted by you back in June. So those two additional dollars for the foundation allowance, additional students, were the main drivers of you can see there almost $5.7 million in increased state revenue sources. If you turn to your next page there on the expenditure side, again, the same 3-column presentation for you. The vast majority, the majority of our expenditure adjustments relate, I guess, to two areas. One, as is always the case, since about 75% of our expenditures are in people costs, we've adjusted our compensation and benefits to reflect, one, some settled union contracts, which we did not have back in June, as well as better information. Every year we try to estimate. We go into every school year with a certain number of open positions district-wide, and we try to certainly project how many of those positions will be filled and at what point in time they might be filled during the calendar year. So the first 6 months, based on what's actually happened, we make some adjustments to those numbers. We have better information on our health insurance increases that went into effect in January. And we'll likely have an amendment too, which we'll likely bring to the board in May. We'll see some additional adjustments to our people costs. The other big impact, and I didn't mention on the revenue side, but in the general fund, we have really two major columns, if you will. We'll see it in a minute. First is the general Board of Education operating dollars. Those are the dollars, the revenue and expenditures that have the impact on the fund balance. The other column is a grant column that is used in our general operations. Reminds you that any grant revenues equal grant expenses, so it has no impact on fund balance. So again, there were a number of grants that we were not made aware of and hadn't been determined yet at June 30th. There was a major grant in terms of our after-school programming where we believe we were only going to get one cohort, and we ended up getting four cohorts, and that resulted in over $2 million in additional revenue. So as that revenue goes up on the grant side, an equal amount of expenses come through. So you can see on the expense side, almost $12 million in additional expenses. If you look on the next page, just some of the detail. At the very top is the impact on fund balance. And you can see that the net change in fund balance look here, the $2.47 million decrease in fund balance. The original budget, we reduced fund balance by about $1.5 million, and this Amendment 1 reduces it another $2.4 million. Now, the other change since the budget was adopted back in June is when we had our fiscal year 2019 audit finalized back in October. You may recall this also, we actually picked up a couple $1 million in fund balance. So the original budget passed by this board back in June reflected a fund balance at that time of 5.21%. Because of the pickup at the end of our audit, that raised that fund balance percent to 7.25%. Now, after Amendment 1, if it's adopted by you tonight, reduces that fund balance down to 5.47%. So almost where we started from back in June at the original budget is where this Amendment 2 will get us. Let me stop there a minute and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. I may have missed it, but
It's okay.
Can you highlight sort of where that difference in fund balance is going? Because, as you pointed out, there's increased revenue, and based on that, of course, and then the pickup you mentioned that took us up to 7.25. So to go to the 5.47, those expenditures, maybe that's just what I missed, and not particular expenditure, but just kind of highlighting.
Yeah, well, if you go to this page, the second page of the detail, starting on line AQ, you can see those lines are noted with letters. You look at AQ, that's the major adjustments to our expense side, Mr. Ross and the rest of the board. So you can see at the very top line AQ, additional almost $2.8 million in people costs. That's compensation adjustments. That's benefit adjustments. There was a small increase in the retirement unfunded liability percentage that increased our benefit costs. We also, come January 1st, when the hard caps are adjusted, and after we've had our open enrollment, which takes place October, November, at that point in time, we know the mix between the various categories of insurance between single, double, and family. So we make adjustments there. That typically has some either increases or decreases in those health benefit costs, if you will. If you look at line AT, that's the center program tuition increase cost us $840,000. Now again, each individual district has to pick up the shortfall of the center programs between the revenue in that program and the expenses. And going over to the ISD the first year, it's costing them more to run that program, certainly this first year. They've had some positions. They've apparently have filled some positions that were open when we ran the programs, and based on all that, we estimate it's going to cost us an additional $840,000 that we had not planned on back in June at that point in time. The costs weren't yet determined. Line AR is related to our ELA curriculum. That was brought to the board on purchasing agenda back in May. So we had adopted that new ELA curriculum at that point in time, and when the budget was passed, we were still negotiating with Pearson, the vendor, in terms of how we're going to pay for that. This is you may recall, it's a big spend, over $1 million, and we don't pay for that in 1 year. So we did not finalize that payment structure until after the budget was adopted. So it was not in the budget in June, and the impact is about $264,000, you can see there. And then line AS, again, based on what happened the first 6 months of the year, we determined that we're probably going to need our estimate for instructional services and substitute are going to be a little bit more than we had initially anticipated, by the amount of $261,000, if you will. So those are some of the major increase categories. In the instruction side, if you look down the support
Mr.
services.
Oberst, just before you move on to the other side, that would AQ also include, because we had more students, would we have had more hires?
Yeah, we made some, we had hired additional personnel too, yeah.
Okay.
No question about it. Support services, again, AX, that line AX, their same situation with the impact on staff there. AY, professional learning costs related to curriculum implementation. That includes both the PD required for the ELA, new ELA, as well as some additional PD that was needed for the Go Math, which was a math program we adopted the prior year. And the key to success in these new curriculums is making sure our teachers are well equipped. And so we determined we need some additional resources for teachers that was not in the original budget back in June. AZ is combination of some outside purchase services and software implementation, primarily in our business office software we've been process now of implementing, and some additional costs related to synergy with some changes in that software program going forward, some challenges we had in the past. And then repair and maintenance costs, as we ran down and let expire, may recall, our sinking fund back in 2016. We still have repair and maintenance costs, and it's always an estimate at the beginning of the year in terms of what we think we're going to spend on that. And the first 6 months, we had some additional repair and maintenance costs that hadn't been anticipated, and so we upped that estimate also. And so those are the other one, line BB, and that resulted from that trash removal. We had allocated every year for a long time our food service program, which is funded completely with federal dollars. We allocated a portion of our recycling and trash costs to the food service program. Because frankly, a good chunk of that is related to those programs, each individual building. We had a program audit last year on the food service program. For whatever reason this year, they would not accept that allocation without some more specific support for that. We had significant dialogue with MDE about what that would look like. Their first suggestion was we should put separate containers at each of our buildings to separate the food service related trash from the regular trash. A couple of problems with that. One is most of our buildings don't have room for a third container. We already have a recycling container and a trash container. And secondly, it's very difficult to train people to differentiate between which container to throw the regular trash in and the food service trash. We had offered what's called a waste study, where they take a sample of some of our schools, and this would be our trash vendor, and take it back to their warehouse and dump it out and separate it and try to give us a good estimate. That didn't please them either. So long story short, we weren't able at this point yet to come to a resolution. And so that $140,000, which had previously been charged to the food service program, came back into the general fund because we could no longer allocate that without some kind of resolution with MDE. So those are the major expenditure adjustments, if you will, on the general operating fund. Again, the grant column, as I said earlier, the increases in expense of $6.3 million equals the increase in revenue of $6.3 million, has no impact on fund balance. We anticipate, as I said earlier, to bring in Amendment 2 at the board meeting, late board meeting, and will actually be finance in May, board meeting in June, just prior to the end of our fiscal year. Any questions on Amendment 1?
I guess I have a question with the increase due to student enrollment and then the governor's budget. How much were we able to put a dent on hiring staff? Because I'm looking at Swart's email to us on the number of open positions. I'm just wondering how much recruiting and offering of opportunities came out of that, or.
I mean, it continues to be a challenge, and I don't believe any of our HR folks are in the house tonight. Reverend Matias, I don't know offhand what I know we're making some decent progress early in the fiscal year. Dr. Gorman, I don't know if you...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, we're making strides. I was at Alger today. The state was there on a visit. We're fully staffed at Alger, right? So that's a school where we've had some challenges throughout the years with having it fully staffed. And the state was pleasantly surprised today that building is fully staffed. We're working tirelessly. I mean, there is a teacher shortage in the state of Michigan, but, we're working closely with Human Resources. We're hosting open houses for our student teachers. So our really good student teachers, before they leave, we're the first persons who are approaching them to ensure that they stay here in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. we just hosted a luncheon for our childcare workers and paraprofessionals, because those are the individuals in the district who already have associate's degrees. And we've worked out an agreement with higher education to pay for 9 of their credit hours, and then higher ed is paying for 3, so they get 12 credits per year, and we're hopeful that in 2 years or so, those individuals can become teachers. These are some of the individuals in our district who have some of the best relationships with our students. This is one of the most diverse pools of potential teachers. So we're making strides, but there's still a shortage, and we're chipping away every day.
And I will say, as it relates to the support staff, all those support union contracts were negotiated this year and settled, including the one tonight. And all those contracts, the Parapros, the GRAOP group, the GRESPA group, the Grayson group, we had a problem in particular with entry-level wages. Again, you've heard this story before, when a kid can go to McDonald's and make $15 an hour, and we have food service workers starting at $11 an hour. It's impossible to hire people. And so many of the compensation adjustments, while they average within what you approved, we saw greater increases at the lower levels to try to be able to hire entry-level people in there, because it's been very, very difficult in this full employment scenario we have here in Kent County in particular. So, but it still remains a challenge all the way around.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Again, Ms. Schottky, 3 separate motions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion for approval of adoption of Budget Amendment 1 for the general fund, please?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Vice President Chucky?
Yes. May I please have a motion for approval of adoption of Budget Amendment 1 for the Special Revenue Fund?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Vice President Chucky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, and lastly, may I have a motion for approval of adoption of Budget Amendment 1 for the Debt Retirement Fund?
So-
Motion to approve the Amendment 1 for Debt Retirement Fund.
Support.
All right. Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Vice President Chucky?
Yes.
Amendment passed.
Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda grouping?
Motion to approve the consent agenda grouping?
Support.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Vice President Chucky?
Yes, thank you. All right, for discussion this evening, I have a brief superintendent search update. So the Grand Rapids Board of Education we met during a public work session on January 27 to discuss, deliberate, and vote on which candidates would be invited for interviews for the position of superintendent. First round interviews will take place this Saturday, February 8, beginning at 8:30 a.m. right here in the administration building. And the following candidates have been invited to interview for the position of superintendent: Dr. Eric Pruitt, Dr. Leadrian Roby, Dr. Darren Slade, Dr. Yvonne Stokes, and Dr. Harold Brian Yearwood. And we certainly invite the public to come and listen and provide feedback, as that is very valuable for us as we make this incredibly important decision for our children in our district.
Ms. Schottky.
Yes, Dr. Baker.
And I believe I should have mentioned this last Monday, but it was late. There was discussion that we would not be streaming this live And I understand the rationale was to not give candidates later in the day the opportunity to hear. It also does deny our public an opportunity to provide input throughout the day. So I don't know. I just like to note that and see if people have a sense of reconsidering it. And I know that there's a consequence of people looking in. I would probably do the same if I had a later interview. But at the same time, last year we got quite a bit of people who were sending information along by listening live, and I just worry that we're losing a lot. So I don't know if others have the same thought, and if so, if we could ask the consultant to reconsider and perhaps even make a decision that day when we have the full board here.
Sure. Any other discussion on that?
Yeah, I think I do tend to giving the public more information in comparison to the risk of giving a candidate, I guess, an edge of sorts. I guess I would, yeah, I guess it's really just that. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, but I guess I would think that we would be critical enough in our listening and whatnot that, you know, I guess it could push someone to a greater opportunity maybe to be a finalist, but I don't think that would, I don't know. I mean, it is a quandary, but end of the day, I still think the public should have an opportunity to view things as they're occurring, personally.
Yes, Ms. Lewis.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Ross. I think we can ask these folks who are going to be interviewed, you know, professionally, not to watch the streaming and just assume that they have not. They're professionals. They're applying for a very important job, and I think we can trust them, to be honest.
We can be hopeful, at least.
I'm the internal optimist.
Very good. Well, I know that President Grant just had this come to mind and that she was hoping for some feedback, so I'll provide this to her, and then we'll report out via email and then to the public as well on the decision. So thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well,
I guess one point of
yeah,
clarification then, is this I guess with it's a matter of whose decision, I guess maybe is the question. Is it a individual decision or is it a collective decision? And maybe you don't have an answer to that, but.
Yeah.
Is it almost a vote for that matter then? I guess that's at the end of the day.
Sure. Well.
And again, maybe to Dr. Baker's point, maybe it's a vote that occurs that day, since obviously we don't have everyone here today, but I guess I'm hesitant to simply accept a decision as opposed to having a.
Yes, please, by all means.
Mr. Ross, we will be prepared for whatever decision is made from a technical perspective. So as long as we know sooner than later, we will be prepared.
So my sense is that we will move that way. Should one of us want it, my sense is that we will stream it. So we did it last time. We've set precedents, and I agree that we should do it again because the public deserves to be able to listen in, especially if they're not able to access the building at that time. So.
And we have discussed all of the questions in a public meeting already, so.
That's true. You know, if somebody can't look back. That's exactly what are we thinking. You know, at length, we discussed each question. we put the commas publicly out there. So.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, certainly, I suppose there are some risks, but to repeat an answer that someone has already said is also a risk. So there are pros and cons to both sides of this. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to have our community in mind. So I'm certain that Ms. Grant will go that way. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, absolutely. So I'd like to just take a moment to offer the sympathies and condolences on behalf of the Board of Education for the sudden passing of Cindy Stauffer. We were just so saddened to learn that we lost such a valuable staff person. And so to her family and her friends and to her colleagues here tonight, on behalf of my colleagues, we extend our sympathies. Thank you. Thank you. Yep, we do. We have any public comment?
Yes, we have
great.
one.
Very good.
So we read this part, right?
Yes.
Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. You will need to state your full name before providing your comment. We will then start the timer at the beginning of your public comment time and provide you with a 1-minute notice by flagging a red card indicating 1 minute remains. I think I'll just wave my hand. You will need to complete your comment time upon being notified that 3 minutes have passed. Board members do not respond to public comment. Concerns will be brought to the attention of the appropriate staff. We value your input and thank you for sharing it with us. If Pastor Lisa Marie Barnes is here.
Hello.
Welcome, Ms. Barnes.
Hi, I am Pastor. Woo! Okay, board members, y'all gonna get some new chairs. I'm good.
Okay, very good.
I'm good. Hi, I am Pastor Dr. Lisa Marie Barnes. I'm the Associate Pastor of World Priesthood Ministries Church alongside my husband, Bishop Dr. Eric Barnes, and we are here to do a kudos shout out. I am one of the grandparents of one of the children of the Grambus Public School District, as well as many of our parents from our church has been raining about this one person, and so they selected me, and I'm honored to do this. This is in recognition of outstanding leadership. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the others of needs. She does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the quality of her actions and integrity of her intention. Thank you for being you. You make a difference. Ms. Bridget Cheney.
All right.
And again, a lot of times the school board, you don't hear the great things. You only hear the bad things. And so when they asked me, I was honored. In fact, I snuck out of Bible study. My husband's teaching, so I'm going to tip out. But we just want to let you know that Grambus Public Schools, that we love you, we support you. We're right at 28th and Eastern, so we go to a lot of the schools to make sure that our kids are following directions, and we support you guys, and we love you.
Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Gorman, superintendent comments.
No comment this evening.
Thank you. Board member comments, Dr. Flores.
No comment.
Dr. Baker.
Yeah, just encourage folks to be here or listen in on Saturday so you can give us feedback, and please send feedback every way possible.
Thank you. Ms. Davis.
No comment.
Reverend Matias.
Just at the beginning of Black History Month, and certainly Black History Month goes into many arenas, including Latin America. And so we want to make sure that as we celebrate, we remember that diversity as well. And so again, congratulations to one of our hardworking persons too in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ross.
No comment.
Ms. Lewis. All right, no comment. Meeting adjourned.